There's a village that no longer exists. No name on a map, no records, just a shadow in the shape of memory and a warning etched in whispers. They say it vanished overnight, swallowed whole by the forest it once fed on. But before the trees reclaimed it, before the people were erased, there was a woman and a fire that did not kill her. It made her eternal. Witherbrook Hollow was nestled in a forgotten crook of the English countryside, a place where roads ended and silence began. The year was 1735, and though it was a time of reason and enlightenment across Europe, Witherbrook remained afraid of the dark. The villagers feared what they could not explain, and in Witherbrook, nothing was ever explained. Cattle would turn up dead with their eyes removed, children born with teeth, or with none at all, and sometimes mothers would hear their infants crying, even when their arms were empty. They blamed her, Morwenna, a healer, a midwife, a woman who knew the forest better than any man. When 7 children died within a fortnight, when their mouths foamed black, they didn't seek answers. They sought vengeance. They set her aflame under a blood moon. But Morwenna did not scream. She smiled, and then she spoke the curse. Morwenna whispered, "Your children will vanish into the roots. Your lineage will rot. Your bloodline will die screaming." That should have been the end. But fire does not cleanse what the earth still wants, and the earth wanted vengeance. Decades after the witch burned, the children of Witherbrook began to vanish again. No screams, no blood, just a bundle of herbs, tied in red thread. 4 decades passed. The villagers of Witherbrook tried to forget the night they burned the witch. They told themselves it was justice. They buried her ashes deep in the woods, and they prayed that fire had ended her. But curses, like roots, burrowed deep. In the summer of 1735, a boy named Elias Crowther was the first to vanish. He was chasing butterflies near the forest edge. Witnesses say he stopped, looked at something in the trees, and walked straight in. He never came back. They searched for days, found no tracks, no clothing, no blood, only a bundle of dried herbs wrapped in red thread, left neatly on his pillow. The same herbs Morwenna used to calm infants. Chamomile, poppy, angelica. The village priest said it was a test from God. But mothers began locking their doors before sunset. Fathers kept axes beside their beds. Because Elias Crowther was not the last. He was only the beginning. A little girl standing in her room, staring out the window, whispers in the wind. A mother wakes up screaming. Her baby is gone. The cradle rocks gently. A boy sleepwalks into the forest. His brother follows. Neither return. Each scene ends with a bundle of herbs tied in red thread. On a windowsill, a doormat, a bedside table. Over the next 6 months, 12 children disappeared. No signs of struggle. No ransom. Only silence and red thread. The elders began to whisper the name they'd buried long ago. Morwenna. They remembered the smile she wore in the flames. And they remembered her curse. Then came the other signs. The livestock refused to enter the barn. Bread molded in a single night. Pregnant women miscarried. And in the dreams of the grieving mothers, a tall woman with no eyes stood over their beds, humming. A local boy, Simon Griggs, drew this image just 3 days before he vanished. He told his mother the woman lived under the roots. And that night, she sang their names. By autumn, Witherbrook Hollow was no longer a village. It was a tomb waiting to be filled, and the ground beneath it was waking up. A grieving father enters the woods to confront the truth. What he finds is not a ghost, but a shrine. And Morwenna is waiting. By winter's arrival, Witherbrook Hollow had become a graveyard of hope. No laughter, no church bells, only the wind, and the sound of names being whispered in the trees. When young Anna Hale vanished from her bed without a sound, her father, Thomas Hale, broke the pact of silence the village had clung to for so long. He would go into the forest, alone, to bring his daughter back. Thomas Hale was not a man of superstition. He didn't believe in witches or curses, but he believed in love, and he knew his daughter was out there. The villagers warned him. They said no man who entered the hollow's heart ever returned. Thomas didn't care. The deeper Thomas went, the stranger the forest became. He passed the same tree 3 times. He saw footprints in the mud, tiny ones, but they never overlapped or turned around. They just vanished mid-step. He heard children laughing in the distance, but when he followed the sound, he found only bones, stacked neatly in a circle. The forest was alive, watching, breathing, and then he found it. It was not a cabin. It was not a home. It was a shrine, built from the teeth and ribs of those who had once screamed her name. And beneath the effigy, a circle of children, eyes closed, not dead, not breathing, just asleep. Among them, Anna Hale. But the moment Thomas touched her, the roots moved. Something rose from the earth. Not a ghost, not a woman. Morwenna Crow, but changed. She did not speak, but Thomas heard her, inside his mind, not in words, but in grief. She showed him what the village did to her. The fire, the laughter. The children watched as she screamed. The ashes tossed carelessly beneath the roots of this very forest. She was not killing their children. She was keeping them, preserving them, feeding them dreams so they would not remember the fire. Thomas begged her to let them go. He offered his life, his soul, but the curse was not about vengeance. It was about truth. She showed him a final vision. The villagers had buried her heart separately. 7 locks, 7 stones, 1 lie. That lie was never undone, and so the curse would never rest. Thomas Hale was never seen again, but on that same night, every child who had vanished opened their eyes and began to weep. The village makes one last attempt to cleanse itself, but what they uncover beneath the chapel will drive them to madness, because Morwenna is no longer bound by roots. She's beneath their skin. The children returned, but Witherbrook was not saved. They had walked out of the forest with no scratches, no dirt, no memories. They didn't cry. They didn't smile. They simply existed. Wrong. Parents tried to pretend things were fine. They dressed them, fed them, bathed them, but their eyes wouldn't meet theirs. And at night, the children would sit at the edge of their beds, facing the walls, and whisper to the wood. The children change. A girl sits on a rocking chair, whispering names of villagers who would die in the coming days. A boy walks backwards in circles until his feet bleed, staring into the fire. One child carves 7 eyes into a tree and whispers. She sees again. The village had long stopped pretending. What came back from the hollow weren't children. They were vessels. At the center of this unraveling nightmare was Father Marin Hale, no relation to Thomas Hale, but a man just as broken. He had served the village for 40 years. He had christened every lost child. He had blessed the mob that burned Morwenna alive. He had known what was buried beneath the chapel, and he had stayed silent. Father Marin whispers, "We swore to never open it. We swore to never speak her name again." But silence had a cost. Beneath the altar was a sealed chamber, a secret passed down through blood oaths and broken spines. It housed not her body, but her heart, not a metaphor. A real, beating, cursed heart. They thought they had destroyed her, but her death had not ended her. It had changed her. Her body burned, but the villagers found something left behind, beneath the ash. A heart, still warm, still pulsing. The priest said it was an abomination, said they couldn't bury it in holy ground. So they buried it beneath the chapel, inside a lead-lined coffin sealed with chains, salt, and 7 sacred locks. And every priest since had taken a vow to guard it, and to never speak of it. He felt it before he saw it. The air was thick, like syrup, humming with static. The candles wouldn't stay lit. And when he stepped inside, he heard a sound he hadn't heard in 40 years. Breathing. The seals had held for centuries, but they weren't broken from outside. They were breaking from inside. Her heart was waking, and something inside Marin, something he buried long ago, began to scream. He began writing in his Bible, not sermons, not prayers, confessions. We lied to the people. She wasn't a witch. We burned her because she knew the truth. The hollow doesn't belong to God. It belongs to her. And now, she wants it back. The night Witherbrook collapsed wasn't loud. It was slow, like a breath being held too long. One by one, villagers found black sap dripping from their ceilings, roots crawling through floorboards, and the children standing outside, watching, whispering in perfect unison, opened the tomb. Inside was not just a heart. It had grown. Veins spread across the stone. It pulsed with ancient breath. And resting on top, a face. Hers. Not decayed, not dead. Waiting. Morwenna Crow did not return for revenge. She returned for completion. to become what they feared most, their god. A man digs his own grave and lies inside it, laughing. A mother tries to tear her child's face off, crying, "This isn't mine." The church burns from within, but no flames are visible, only screaming. Witherbrook Hollow no longer exists. But the earth remembers, and if you step too deep into the woods, you might hear a voice, sweet, gentle, calling you by name. Because Morwenna doesn't sleep, she waits. The night the tomb was opened, Witherbrook didn't burn. It didn't collapse. It bled, and the roots beneath it drank deeply. Father Marin deliriously said, "She is risen in flesh and in root, in bone and in memory. She has become the Hollow." He had broken the final seal, not to release her, but to atone, to offer himself as penance. But witches do not want apologies, only the truth. And Morwenna's truth was hunger. From the altar to the furthest cottage, roots spread like veins through stone. The Hollow was alive now, and it had begun reclaiming what was stolen. A man wakes to find his wife standing over him, her eyes weeping black sap. She whispers, she wants her skin. Children draw circles on the floors with their blood, chanting in tongues no one taught them. A woman runs into the night, barefoot in snow, screaming, "Take my voice back. I don't want it anymore." Those who denied her spoke only in riddles before their tongues turned to ash. Those who stayed silent heard her in their walls, naming their sins. And those who cheered as she burned, they saw her. Witherbrook had always sat on something ancient, something sacred. But Morwenna's death had not been the end. It was the binding of flesh to soil. The villagers hadn't killed a witch. They had planted her, and now she had grown. She was not a spirit, not a ghost. She had form, shape, voice, and now she had body. Morwenna said, "Which of you confessed?" Father Marin said weakly, "I tried. I told them. I kept the seals." Morwenna said, "No, you buried me beneath their faith, and let them forget the fire." He offered his soul. She took something far worse. By dawn, Witherbrook no longer existed in the world as we know it. It was not destroyed. It was removed, absorbed, sanitized from time. The roads that led to it vanished. The names of its people forgotten, as if something had exhaled and erased it like a smudge on glass. Only the Hollow remained, a scar in the woods where no birds fly, where no sound echoes, where the air hums with guilt and rot. They found one girl, no name, no history, wrapped in moss, alive but unbreathing. When asked where she came from, she smiled and spoke in Morwenna's voice. "The roots have reached you now. If you made it this far, you've heard what was never meant to be told. And the Hollow knows your name now. Subscribe to the channel before the roots find you."